that I want to bring up this morning as to why we need to be in church is because it is made up of people just like us. A couple of weeks ago, I mentioned that one of the biggest excuses that people give as to why they don't go to church, especially those on the outside, is hypocrisy. This comes from research done by the Barna Group, who found that among people with no religious affiliation in the 16 to 29 age range, 85% say one reason they don't go to church is because, well, Christians are just a bunch of hypocrites. Well, as I and many others have said, when someone says that to me, I just say, well, come join us. There's always room for one more. But anyone who makes this claim, though, has already kind of stuck their foot in their mouth. Because simply by making this statement, they are suggesting that they are not a hypocrite, that they are never guilty of saying one thing and then doing another. If you doubt this statement, then I invite you to name one group or organization of any kind where there is absolutely no hypocrisy and it is free of any kind of inconsistency. Whether you're talking about any service organization out there or any other government agency. One example of hypocrisy, though, that has always stuck with me. Do any of you remember when Al Gore came out with that movie, An Inconvenient Truth, when he was promoting that film? Now, it's been a few years back, but it was all about global warming. He suggested that our government should adopt new regulations on carbon emissions, that people needed to stop driving their big SUVs, buy smaller fuel-efficient cars or electric cars. He said we needed to get rid of fossil fuel power plants, switch over to clean energy like solar and wind. Also, that every American needed to curtail their energy use, and all of us needed to make sacrifices in our lives so that we might lessen our carbon footprint. Now, all of these were good suggestions, right? But then after he spoke, he was picked up by a huge limousine, driven to the airport where he got on his private Learjet. Do you find anything about that being a little hypocritical? Well, yeah. To me it was. You see, his words were in direct contrast to his advice. What he did was not what he said we should all do. He claimed one thing and then did another. Now, people who say one thing but do another. People who believe they don't have to live by the same rules and standards as everyone else. Hypocrites in the church. Yes, I'm sure we have a few hypocrites in every church. But the last time I checked, there are no perfect churches, and there are no perfect people. But the accusation directed at church people by non-church people suggests that we are intentionally acting hypocritically. And I do not believe that that is true. I believe the vast majority of church people are sincerely trying to do their best to live up to Christian standards. In the New Testament, the only time Jesus pointed out hypocrisy was when he witnessed someone who was doing something deliberately to appear to be something they were not. In other words, they were purposely putting on a show for the people around them. For example, he describes the Pharisees questioning their motivations for acting piously. Jesus accused them of putting on a show for people watching them because, well, they were doing it for the recognition. He called them whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of dead man's bones. Matthew 25:27. Jesus also talked about people who gave to charity in order to receive accolades from those who were watching when they dropped into the poor box in the temple. Jesus warned. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets to be honored by men. Matthew 6:2. I've always been a little uncomfortable with those pictures that appear in the newspaper handing the check to some organization. You know, you've seen those, haven't you? Right or wrong, it just makes me a little uncomfortable. Jesus also said, and when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by men. I tell you the truth, they have received their reward in full. Matthew chapter 6, verse 5. Jesus pointed out these people and labeled them as hypocrites. Now, I do not believe that any of us got up this morning, went through our morning routine, and thought to ourselves, I'm going to go to church and put on a good show so everyone will see just how pious that I am. I don't think any of us did that. Although there could be a few exceptions. I believe that few church people are guilty of being a hypocrite because they are trying to put on a show. Usually what makes us feel a little hypocritical, though, is when our conduct does not match our words. And then we must admit that we have fallen short, that we need to change our behavior. So when someone outside of the church who has no intention of ever attending a worship service claims that the reason they don't want to come to church is because it's full of hypocrites, well, it's really just a convenient excuse, isn't it? Not really based in fact. It seems to be quite easy for a secular person who isn't worried about living by the Christian standards to pass judgment on those who are trying to do so. By the way, being too judgmental is also another accusation that is constantly leveled at Christians by those outside of the church. Isn't that true? The reason most Christians want to belong to a church is because we are acknowledging that we are not perfect in our conduct. We know there are times when we fail to live by Christ's example. And we need to be a part of the Christian community that will encourage us and hold us accountable to live by those Christian standards. What many people on the outside of the church looking in fail to acknowledge, or perhaps they don't really want to see, is that there are a lot of people in the church who are trying very hard to follow Jesus to the best of their abilities. And I believe that the church is a place to go to find good people. And being around good people is important for us. You know, when I was growing up, my parents were quite concerned about the other people I was around. Did you have that experience? Did it matter who your friends were? It did to my parents. My father was very concerned about, as he said, the kids I ran around with. They understood well that that had an effect on me. Because some of the kids that they told me to stay away from always were in trouble in school, and some of them were even in trouble with the law. They understood well the advice that the Apostle Paul gave in his first letter to the Corinthians when he said, do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. 1 Corinthians 15:33. The reason we need to be in church is because it allows us to be around many people of good character, or at least people who are trying to do better and learn how to do better. Of course the church has its share of wingnuts, mean-spirited people, those who want to control everything or everyone. And I'm sure we've even got a few hypocrites. But again, I would challenge you to name any organization or group of people that doesn't have those same issues. The story Jesus that he tells about the dishonest manager is not a story of a hypocrite. Although it is quite clear that this person is a real scoundrel, he is not claiming to be something that he is not. He is clearly taking care of himself at the expense of his employer. But when his employer finds out what he's done, he can't help but be impressed at the cunning resourcefulness of this man. Because he's out there using his employer's wealth to make friends for himself, because he knows that his job is about to end. And the point of Jesus' parable is fairly clear. Jesus says, don't be like this guy. And he goes on to say, whoever is dishonest in a very little will also be dishonest with much. And Jesus points out something else that still holds true in our society today. The people of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own kind than are the people of light. And of course, meaning those who are followers of Christ. Sometimes I think we get a little concerned with being nice all the time. The church is the place where you will find many good people who are taking their responsibilities as a Christian very seriously, and who are sincerely trying to follow Christ in their daily lives. It's important for us all to be around people of good character, as Paul clearly points out. Now, if bad company corrupts good character, the inverse is also true. Good company would promote good character. Wouldn't you agree? I read a story a while back by a pastor who told this story on himself. He didn't give his name for obvious reasons. He began his story by saying that he had stopped by a library to pick up a book that he had been wanting to read because he wanted the book to put together a sermon. So he went in, he got the book, he came out, got in his car, started out. About the time he was trying to leave the parking lot, this old, scraggly guy comes by pushing a grocery cart full of junk, waddling along on the sidewalk in front of him, so he had to sit there and wait for him to go by. Well, about the time that he got in front of his car, he caught one of the wheels of the cart on a crack in the sidewalk and spilled everything all over the sidewalk, right in front of his car. Well, he was kind of in a hurry, and this was not helping it at all. He sat there in his car, waiting for the man to start gathering up his stuff, which he was doing quite slowly. Sitting there, getting more impatient by the minute, drumming his fingers on the steering wheel, hoping that this man would hurry up and get the heck out of his way. While he was watching this, so he heard a car door slam in the car behind him, and he noticed this very well-dressed young woman walking by his car, and she went up to the man and started helping him gathering up all of his stuff that he had spilled out. And it took them a little while to get it all gathered up and put back into his grocery cart. When they got it all done, she grabbed hold of the cart and helped him get it over that rough spot in the sidewalk. And he turned around and thanked her. He went on his way, waddling on down the sidewalk. And she went back to her car. Later, the pastor said, I have to tell you that I have never in my life felt more like the Levite and the priest who passed by on the other side of the road, while the Good Samaritan, in the form of this young woman, helped that poor old homeless guy in the middle of the road. And the true irony of this moment, said the pastor, was that I had gone to the library to get a book I wanted for a sermon. But as I sat there in that parking, I saw a much better sermon acted out right in front of me. Now, we don't know if the woman was a church attender or even Christian. Yet, what was very clear is that she was a person who was faithful in very little. And therefore, it's right for us to believe that she would be faithful in much. The reason we need to be in church is so we can be around people that are just like us and who are better than us, who can mentor us, help us in our walk, help us to be faithful in our discipleship. In many of our colleges today, students are required to take a class on ethics. Many professional vocations have codes of ethics that people must know and are expected to adhere to in all different aspects: business, medical industry, the legal industry. Most of them follow basic rules and principles for behavior decided by a consensus of people that they call ethics. But we also have morals, and morals have been put into place by God. And to make things even more difficult, there is sometimes a difference between what is considered ethical and what is considered morally right. Ethics can be very complicated sometimes, but morality and virtue really aren't. Virtue is simply abiding by the laws that God has put into place. Virtue is a matter of integrity, of character. Society teaches us ethics, but virtue, not ethics, is what is taught in the church. Ethics can often change depending on the circumstances, but good morals do not change. You see, attending church puts us in the company of good people, people who are generous, often self-sacrificing, ready to respond to the needs around them. They are generous, ready to help. They are people who are sincerely doing their best to be faithful in the little things, and also in big ones. Good company promotes good character. And when we go to church, we place ourselves in the company of good people. And every so often, we get a glimpse of Christ's character shining through in the good character and the good deeds of the people around us. Yes, we need the church in order to grow spiritually, in order to mature in our faith, and to encourage us in our own discipleship. Let's pray. Loving God, we thank you for this church that we are a part of. Yes, we need this church. As we strive to learn more about our faith and what it means to be one of your disciples, Lord, help us in our walk. Help us to grow so that we might more